Because OKC is dangerous when everybody's involved. When everybody's involved and they're playing well, they're very, very difficult to beat.
For years, people have expressed pure hate for OKC, and now Shaquille O'Neal is finally saying why. From jealousy over the team's success to tensions that have been building behind the scenes, Shaq reveals what's really fueling the hate. But as more details come to light, a surprising revelation emerges, one that could completely change the way people view OKC. The team everyone loved to hate. The 2025-26 Oklahoma City Thunder were the best team in the Western Conference. 64 wins, 18 losses, the #1 seed, the highest net rating in the league. They had the reigning MVP in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They had Chet Holmgren anchoring the rim. They had Jalen Williams, Alex Caruso, Lou Dort, and a bench so deep that even when key guys sat out, the machine kept running. On paper, this was a team you were supposed to admire. But somewhere between the regular season dominance and the playoff push, the admiration turned into something else. Forums, comment sections, group chats, post-game threads, all of them started saying the same thing: OKC games were unwatchable, not because the Thunder were bad, because of how they won. The complaint started with SGA. He led the league in free throw attempts. He got to the line more than almost any player in the NBA, and the way he got there became the single most debated topic in basketball. Pump fakes that drew defenders into the air, then a lean into their body to create contact that was barely there. Drives to the rim where he would twist, contort, snap his head back, and hit the floor like he had been fouled by a freight train, only for the replay to show a hand grazing his hip. One viral compilation tracked 44 separate falls during the playoffs alone. 44 fans started calling him a free throw merchant. Opposing players started calling it out publicly. Jaylen Brown went on record about the foul baiting. And the thing about it was that SGA was genuinely one of the most talented scorers in the world. He could get to his spots, finish with either hand, pull up from mid-range, and run an offense at an elite level. He did not need the theatrics. That was what made it so frustrating for people watching. He was too good to need it, and he did it anyway. But SGA was only half of the equation. The other half was what OKC did on the other end of the floor. Their defense was historically elite, one of the lowest defensive ratings in recent NBA history. They forced turnovers at a ridiculous clip. They switched everything, pressured the ball, and funneled drivers into Holmgren at the rim. And they did all of it with a level of physicality that had people calling it football, not basketball. Lou Dort was the name that came up the most. Dort grabbed, bumped, held, reached, and shoved his way through assignments against the best players in the league. Accusations of dirty play followed him through series against Nikola Jokic, Devin Booker, and Victor Wembanyama. Caruso pushed the same boundaries, and the frustration was not just about the physicality itself, it was about the perceived double standard. OKC's defenders mauled opponents and got away with it. OKC's offense drew soft fouls and got rewarded for it. Fans described it as football on defense, basketball on offense. The same team benefiting from both ends of the whistle. Social media made it louder. Every game produced new low-light reels. Every series produced new flop compilations. Every post-game thread produced new essays about why OKC was ruining the product. And the more they won, the louder it got. Because the thing about dominance in sports is that it works like a magnifying glass. It takes everything you do, good or bad, and makes it bigger. When OKC was an underdog rebuilding through the draft, people loved the story. When OKC was the best team in the league playing a style that critics called manipulative, people wanted them gone. SGA knew it too. When asked about the backlash, about the fans who called him a flopper and a cheat, and worse, he shrugged and said what might have been the most honest thing any player said all season: "I would hate me too." And one of the loudest voices in that chorus of criticism came from a place nobody expected, the TNT studio desk, from a man who had also called SGA one of the best players on the planet. The big man at the desk. Shaquille O'Neal has never been the type to hold back. 4 championships, 3 finals MVPs, a career built on physically overwhelming every human being who tried to stop him from getting to the basket. When Shaq talks about basketball, he talks about it from a place where size, power, and finishing through contact were the currency of greatness. He absorbed hard fouls for 19 years. He dealt with hack-a-Shaq, teams literally fouling him on purpose, because sending him to the free throw line was considered a better strategy than letting him dunk on their center. He never got calls for the contact he took. He never needed them. So when Shaq watched the modern NBA, watched SGA draw foul after foul by leaning into defenders, snapping his head, and hitting the floor after minimal contact, his reaction was visceral. On Inside the NBA, on The Rich Eisen Show, on every platform where Shaq had a microphone, the message was consistent. This was not how the game was supposed to be played. The product, in Shaq's words, was diluted. The gamesmanship was replacing the dominance, and the referees were rewarding it.
You people at home and on TV talking about they were physical with Wemby. Man, y'all need to stop it.
That clip was about physicality against Wembanyama, but it captured Shaq's broader stance perfectly. In his view, modern basketball had redefined what physical meant, and the new definition was soft. What he watched players complain about in 2026 would not have registered as contact in 1996. And the team that embodied this shift more than any other, in Shaq's eyes, was OKC. Shaq drew the line clearly. Putting a body on someone was basketball. That was how the game worked. What he objected to was the reaction to it, the outrage from fans, the complaints from announcers, and most critically, the way modern offenses had learned to weaponize the whistle instead of playing through the contact. This was not specifically about SGA, but SGA was the player who drew more free throws through this kind of craft than anyone else in the league. And Shaq's frustrations with the broader trend kept circling back to the Thunder, the team that combined whistle-hunting offense with aggressive physical defense in a way that critics saw as a double standard and supporters saw as smart basketball. The irony was that Shaq was not just a critic of SGA, he was also one of his biggest admirers. On multiple occasions, Shaq placed SGA in elite company alongside Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade, and LeBron James. He said he only gives that kind of recognition to players who could have played in his era, and SGA was in that category. He called SGA the next face of the NBA, saying that if SGA won a championship, the league was his. On The Rich Eisen Show, Shaq reacted to SGA going for 42 points on 15 of 18 shooting, and the praise was unmistakable.
Oh, man.
Stop stealing that.
Oh, man. Give it here. Don't say nothing.
42 points on 15 of 18 shooting.
That was Shaq watching SGA dismantle the Suns in Game 3 of the first round. He was speechless, he was impressed, and he was not faking it. When SGA played basketball real clean, efficient basketball, Shaq thought he was watching one of the best players he had ever seen.
Give him credit. First, 42 points on 18 shots. We tried different matchups, tried to take it out of his hands.
That was the Suns' coach, essentially admitting there was nothing they could do. And Shaq sat there nodding, because that performance was everything he wanted to see from SGA. Dominance through skill, not through whistles. But that was the tension at the center of Shaq's position. He believed SGA was talented enough to be an all-time great, and he believed the foul baiting and the gamesmanship were beneath a player of that caliber. It was not hate. It was something closer to disappointment wrapped in frustration. Shaq was watching a player who could beat anyone on pure ability choose to spend possessions hunting for free throws instead. And for a man who spent his career being hacked, grabbed, and hammered without getting those calls, that choice was personal. The broader basketball world picked up on the tension and ran with it. Viral YouTube channels turned Shaq's commentary into content. Thumbnails showed Shaq scowling next to SGA's face. Titles screamed about feuds, confrontations, and ultimatums. The algorithm loved the narrative. The old school legend versus the new school star. The physical era versus the gamesmanship era. The man who never got calls versus the man who hunted them. And the louder the internet got, the harder it became to separate what Shaq actually said from what the internet said he said. Because at some point, the conversation stopped being about basketball and started being about mythology. The double standard. The debate around OKC was never just about SGA and the free throw line. It was about the entire ecosystem the Thunder had built, a system that seemed designed to exploit the gap between what the rules allowed and what the game was supposed to look like. On defense, OKC was a wrecking crew. They posted one of the stingiest defensive ratings in recent league history. Their perimeter defense, led by Dort, Caruso, and Cason Wallace, hounded ball handlers with a relentlessness that bordered on harassment. They reached, they grabbed, they bumped cutters off their routes. They used their length to deflect passes and create turnovers at a rate that made opponents look careless. Holmgren sat at the rim like a spider in a web, erasing shots and altering drives with his 7'4" wingspan. The scheme was cohesive, disciplined, and absolutely suffocating. And for the people being suffocated, it felt like the referees were looking the other way. That was the core of the double standard accusation. Opposing players and fans argued that OKC's defenders committed fouls on nearly every possession, the kind of fouls that, if called consistently, would foul out half the roster by halftime. But they were not called consistently. Dort would clamp his arm around a driver's waist and the whistle stayed silent. Caruso would body a guard off a screen with a forearm to the chest, and the play continued. And then on the other end, SGA would initiate contact on a drive, snap his head, and get 2 free throws for what looked like less contact than what his teammates were dishing out on defense. Draymond Green acknowledged the physicality publicly, saying yes, Lou Dort does some bulls, but defended it as competitive. Other players were less diplomatic. The sentiment across locker rooms was clear. OKC played by different rules, not because the league had secretly changed the rulebook for them, but because their style sat right on the edge of what referees would tolerate, and they exploited that edge better than anyone. Shaq, watching from the studio desk, saw the defensive physicality differently than the offensive gamesmanship. When it came to defense, his position was simple. This was how basketball was supposed to be played. Hard, physical, no complaints. When he watched OKC's defenders put a body on Wembanyama or any other star, he did not see a problem. He saw basketball.
This day and age. Yeah, but I don't think Wemby's complaining. So he's not worried about it.
For Shaq, the issue was never the physicality. The issue was the contrast. A team that played like enforcers on one end and actors on the other. A team that embraced contact when it suited their defense and manufactured it when it suited their offense. That combination, that asymmetry was what made people uncomfortable, regardless of which side of the old school versus new school debate they fell on. The numbers supported the perception. OKC ranked near the top of the league in free throw attempts on offense. They also ranked near the top in lowest opponent free throw attempts on defense. That gap, high at the line for them, low at the line for opponents, was unusual enough to draw statistical scrutiny from analysts and confirmation bias from fans who already believed the fix was in. The Vox deep dive on the Thunder's villain arc captured the frustration in detail. A team that had weaponized the rule book on both ends of the court, creating a product that was effective, dominant, and deeply unpleasant for large portions of the audience. The article compared watching OKC to eating a meal that was technically nutritious but tasted like cardboard. It checked every box except the one that mattered, which was enjoyment. Reddit threads dissected the phenomenon from every angle. Some users defended OKC, pointing out that drawing fouls was a skill, that Michael Jordan shot plenty of free throws, that James Harden had done the same thing in Houston for years, and people eventually accepted it. Others argued that OKC had taken it further than Harden ever did, because at least Harden's Rockets did not also have a defense that mauled people. The Thunder were doing it on both ends. That was the difference. And in the middle of all of it was Sam Presti, the general manager who had built this machine. Presti drafted SGA through a trade, he drafted Holmgren, he drafted Jalen Williams, he acquired Caruso and Dort, he constructed a roster that was young, deep, versatile, and whether intentionally or not, perfectly designed to play the style that was driving everyone crazy. The question was whether Presti cared about public perception. The answer, judging by results, was that he cared about winning. And OKC was winning more than almost anyone. Shaq respected the winning. He said so explicitly on air, praising Sam Presti as potentially the best GM in basketball.
We had this conversation. Shaq was talking about, I'm like, yo, man, this dude, his confidence level, he's going to get his shots. And I feel bad my sons are going to get swept. I mean, OKC, man, they're the deepest team in the league.
That was Shaq on the TNT set, openly admitting that OKC was going to sweep the Suns. He was not hiding his respect for the team's depth, their culture, or their construction. He called Presti's scouting department one of the best in the league. He acknowledged that the Thunder's togetherness, the way they played without ego, without arguing, without selfish shot-taking, was rare and valuable.
And what I love about this team the most, if you know anything about sports, the more together you are, the higher the probability of you winning the championship. These guys are so together.
But respect for the machine did not mean love for its methods, and the methods were about to face the one test that would determine whether OKC's style could survive when a team refused to be bullied by it. The Spurs and the reckoning. OKC swept the Lakers in the first round. They swept the Suns in the second round. 11 straight first-round wins. The machine looked invincible. SGA was putting up 40-point games on absurd efficiency. The bench was outscoring opposing benches by margins that did not seem real. 57-25 in bench points in one game, 107-41 in the series against the Spurs through 2 games. Holmgren was blocking shots and spacing the floor. Caruso was shooting 11 for 18 from 3 in the conference semifinals. Everything was working. The hate was loud, but the winning was louder. And then San Antonio figured something out. The Spurs were the younger team. Victor Wembanyama was in his second playoff run, surrounded by Dylan Harper, Devin Vassell, Stephon Castle, and a supporting cast that had won 62 games of their own. They were not intimidated by OKC. They were not confused by the scheme. And they had something that the Lakers and Suns did not have, the personnel and the discipline to make OKC play a game. It was not comfortable playing. It started with how they guarded SGA. The Spurs did not panic. They did not send help early. They did not bite on pump fakes. Vassell played SGA straight up, stayed down on fakes, and forced him to finish through contact instead of drawing it. SGA's free throw attempts dropped. His efficiency dropped. The craft that had earned him trips to the line against lesser defenses stopped working against a team that had spent 76 games studying his tendencies. As one CBS analyst put it during the series, the ISO one-on-one does not work against a defense that knew every move before he made it. And when SGA's whistle dried up, OKC's offense stagnated. The half-court sets that worked in the regular season suddenly looked forced. The three-point shooting, always variable, went ice cold cold in key games, dipping into the high 20s from deep during losses. The spacing that had been lethal in the first 2 rounds became predictable against a team that scouted every action and switched every screen. On the other end, Wembanyama did exactly what Shaq had been telling him to do all series. He was aggressive. He attacked the rim. He mixed in threes when his confidence was rolling. In the Game 6 blowout that forced a Game 7, Wemby hit his first 2 threes, and the entire building knew it was over. He finished with 28 points in 28 minutes, grabbed 10 rebounds, and barely spoke in the postgame. 2 quick questions, and he was gone. The analysts noticed. This young man was focused. The postgame analysis of Game 6 was a forensic breakdown of everything that had gone wrong for OKC. Their starters shot 3 of 17 from 3. The Spurs went on a 20-0 run in the third quarter. OKC's body language deteriorated visibly. Analysts on the broadcast used words like mentally fatigued and exhausted to describe what they were seeing from a team that had played deep into the previous postseason as well. Avery Johnson, the former Spurs guard and coach who was serving as an analyst for the series, captured the shift in momentum with a simple observation. OKC had more pressure on them than anyone. They were the defending champions. They had the best record. They had home court. And all of that expectation, all of that weight, was now sitting on their shoulders heading into a Game 7. The Spurs had done what the internet had been begging someone to do all season. They had taken OKC's advantages, the foul drawing, the physical defense, the depth, and neutralized them through preparation, discipline, and a generational talent in Wembanyama, who refused to be rattled by the physicality that Shaq himself had called overblown. And they did it in a Game 7 on OKC's home floor to end the defending champions season. OKC was eliminated 4-3 in the Western Conference Finals. The team that everyone hated was going home. And the reaction across the basketball world was not sympathy. It was satisfaction. The Spurs had not just beaten OKC. They had validated every complaint, every flopping compilation, every unwatchable tweet, every old school take about gamesmanship not surviving real playoff basketball. The Spurs had proven that when the whistles tightened, when the refs stopped rewarding the lean-ins, when a defense stayed disciplined enough to deny the craft, OKC did not have a plan B. Their style, the style that had made them dominant and despised in equal measure, had a ceiling, and San Antonio found it. What Shaq actually thinks. Here's where the story gets complicated. Because if you watched every clip, read every transcript, and tracked every comment Shaq made about OKC during the 2025-26 season, you would not find a man who hated the Thunder. You would find a man who was conflicted. Shaq called SGA part of greatness. He compared him to Jordan, Kobe, and Magic. He said SGA was the face of the league and that if he won a championship, it was his NBA. He praised OKC's togetherness, their depth, their scouting, and their culture. He called Sam Presti the best GM in basketball. He predicted OKC would sweep the Suns, and they did. He sat on TV and said with visible admiration that he had rarely seen a team play with this level of collective unselfishness.
The other guys have the opportunity to also play their game and take shots, and these guys are just 2 together. Even when, a couple guys go out, the culture, that Sam Presti has built, they just keep them together. And
at the same time, Shaq's frustrations were real. He believed the foul baiting was beneath SGA's talent. He believed the modern NBA's relationship with the whistle was making the product worse. He believed that players of SGA's caliber should be dominating through skill and force, not through gamesmanship. And he expressed those beliefs loudly, repeatedly, and in the blunt, confrontational style that has defined his media career. But here is what the internet did with that tension. It took Shaq's genuine, nuanced position, admiration mixed with criticism, and flattened it into a headline. Shaq hates OKC, Shaq goes off on SGA, Shaq gives OKC a reality check. The viral machine needed a simple story, and legendary big man respects young stars' talent, but wishes he would stop flopping does not get clicks the way Shaq destroys SGA does. And then the tunnel story appeared. Multiple viral YouTube videos claimed that after a game, supposedly a 131-108 OKC win over the Lakers, Shaq confronted SGA in the arena tunnel. The videos described Shaq blocking SGA's path, leaning into his face and delivering a line that became the most quoted sentence in the entire discourse. SGA allegedly fired back. Security allegedly intervened. The videos described shouting, tension, and a dramatic standoff between the old guard and the new. The videos got millions of views. The comments sections exploded. The narrative hardened. Shaq hated OKC. SGA clapped back. The war between eras was real and personal. The entire tunnel confrontation existed in the space between what Shaq might plausibly say because his style is blunt and provocative, and what actually happened on camera or on the record. It was compelling content, it was great for engagement, and it was at best unverified dramatization designed for clicks. That does not mean the criticisms were fabricated. Shaq's on-air comments about physicality, foul baiting, and the modern game are documented. His frustrations with how the whistle is used in today's NBA are consistent and long-standing, and the broader discourse about OKC, the flopping compilations, the double standard accusations, the unwatchable complaints, was very real and very widespread. spread. Fans, players, coaches, and analysts all contributed to it. Shaq was one voice in a chorus. But the title of this story is Shaq Explains Why Everyone Hates OKC. And the truth is more complicated than the title suggests. Shaq does not hate OKC. Shaq respects OKC deeply. What Shaq hates is a version of basketball that he believes is beneath the talent on that roster. He hates that a player as gifted as SGA spends possessions hunting for free throws instead of finishing through contact. He hates that the league rewards it. And he hates that the game he dominated through sheer physical force has evolved into something where the whistle matters as much as the skill. Whether that makes Shaq right or wrong depends on where you stand in the oldest argument in basketball. The game evolves, players adapt to the rules they are given. SGA exploits those rules better than almost anyone alive. To some, that is genius. To Shaq, it is a waste of greatness. And for OKC, the team that everyone loved to hate, the answer came on the court. In a Game 7, against a Spurs team that refused to be fooled by the gamesmanship, led by a generational big man playing exactly the kind of dominant, physical, no-excuses basketball that Shaq has been asking for all along. The Thunder season ended not because the hate caught up to them, but because a team showed up that could beat them the old-fashioned way. Maybe that is what Shaq was trying to say the whole time. Found this information exciting and unbelievable. Be sure to check out other similar and amazing videos on the screen. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next video.